With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halvorson.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning on the AgNet News Hour. Coming up later in the show, the comment period is closing for proposed changes to food safety standards. We'll have more on that coming up. But our top story today, the USDA announced new action on the Stockyards and Packers Act. It says the Fair and Competitive Livestock and Poultry Markets proposed rule would tackle long-standing challenges around interpretations of unfairness and competitive injury for the livestock, meat, and poultry sectors. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association issued a statement against the rule. NCBA Vice President of Government Affairs Ethan Lane called it a direct attack on cattle producer profitability. The announcement was made Tuesday at the Center for American Progress. CAP's Vice President for Government Affairs, Laura Rodriguez, kicked off the announcement.
Welcome to the Center for American Progress. I want to thank you for joining us for this important conversation with United States Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, and Department of Justice Assistant Attorney General, Jonathan Cantor. On day one, the Biden-Harris administration has worked relentlessly to lower everyday costs for the American people, and hardworking families are already seeing the benefits, including lower health insurance premiums, more affordable prescription drugs, fewer junk fees, and lower utility bills. Across industries, the administration's efforts to lower prices has included new and innovative strategies that target the root causes of higher costs, including corporate consolidation, deceptive practices, and price gouging. In his first year in office, President Biden signed an executive order promoting competition in the American economy, including at one of the places Americans feel it the most, the grocery store checkout line. To spearhead the administration's all-of-government approach to increasing competition, the Biden-Harris administration established the White House Competition Council to foster collaboration among federal agencies, including the USDA and DOJ. Since then, they have increased enforcement to ensure fair and competitive poultry and cattle markets, issued updated rules to clarify labeling and foster a more level playing field. They have also taken steps to hold bad actors accountable for deceptive practices, wage suppression, and more. Like in other industries, the concentration of market power in agriculture sets the stage for corporations to put profits first and make consumers vulnerable to higher prices in order to pad shareholder bank accounts. While families can find ways to curb their spending elsewhere, putting food on the table is a daily necessity. And although there are variables that impact prices outside of our control, such as the avian flu, that makes it all the more critical that the government helps prevent corporate consolidation and price manipulation from raising the cost of chicken, eggs, beef, and more. Our speakers today will highlight the administration's ongoing actions to combat anti-competitive practices and lower costs in the domestic food supply chain. Today, the average American consumes nearly 100 pounds of chicken, 50 pounds of pork, and nearly 60 pounds of beef annually. Therefore, the efforts of the USDA and DOJ to uphold the hallmarks of competition in these industries, things like transparency, diversity, ingenuity, and more, have far-reaching impacts and benefit everyday Americans stocking their refrigerators and kitchen cabinets, as well as ranchers, farmers, and growers alike. To that end, I'm happy to now introduce Jonathan Cantor, Assistant Attorney General for Antitrust at the Department of Justice. Mr. Cantor began his career as an attorney for the Federal Trade Commission's Bureau of Competition. He was confirmed by the U.S. Senate on November 16th of 2021, and as Assistant Attorney General for the Antitrust Division, he has centered integrity and transparency as pillars of a competitive market. Under Mr. Cantor's leadership, DOJ has shed light on unlawful information exchanges that enabled price collusion, brought suit against anti-competitive contract agreements, and opened new channels for farmers and ranchers to anonymously report unfair and anti-competitive practices in the livestock and poultry sectors. Following Mr. Cantor, we will hear from Secretary Tom Vilsack of the United States Department of Agriculture. Secretary Vilsack first led the USDA for 8 years under President Barack Obama and was confirmed on February 23rd, 2021 to fulfill the role in President Biden's cabinet. There, among other priorities, he has overseen efforts to identify and dismantle market consolidation in the food supply chain and directed hundreds of millions of dollars in federal investments to support rural communities, increase competition, and ensure that our country's food system is more resilient and more competitive now and in the future. I'm happy to now welcome Mr. Cantor to the podium.
You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. Continuing our coverage of the announcement from the USDA, here is Department of Justice Assistant Attorney General Jonathan Cantor.
Agricultural enforcement has been a huge priority at the United States Department of Justice Antitrust Division, and it will remain a huge priority going forward. That's because the consequences of concentration in agriculture ripple out into communities, into the daily lives of the people who live and own family farms. It affects us all. I think back to a trip that I took my team last fall to Minnesota. The Minnesota Farmers Union organized a roundtable to discuss rural concentration. At the roundtable, which was actually a kitchen table, family farmer, you can see how everything was all connected. The local hospital's problems came to local bookstores, local concert venues problems. We heard how small farmers face powerful monopolies and were powerless to resist everywhere. Farmers cannot catch a break as buyers or sellers, they told us. And thousands every year have to give up and shut down their family farms. Those losses start to add up. And each one is truly the American dream, destroyed, spiraling. Small towns struggle to survive. Schools shrink, independent pharmacies lose buyers, corner stores vanish, rural communities, hospitals close, and communities suffer. What I just described did and does not have to happen. It was not and is not inevitable. It was and is the product of choices and deals made in boardrooms and backrooms across the country. The deciders often didn't get that a small farm doesn't mean small people or small dreams. They got lost in dollars and models and stock options and spreadsheets. They did not understand that what it means to work the same land as your parents or grandparents before them or great-grandparents before them meant more than you can possibly put in dollars and cents. They did not understand that old famous adage that everyone, no matter who they are, needs a farmer 3 times a day. At DOJ, the Antitrust Division, we do understand that. And that's why we have made this a priority from day one. To grasp how we prioritize agriculture, look no further than a case we filed last fall against one of the most important corporations and influential corporations that you probably never heard of. Our complaint against this company alleges that it created and managed an illegal information exchange among meat processors, allowing the processors to manipulate and fix prices. That hurts the meat buying public and enriches the middlemen at the expense of the family farm and the family farmer. I encourage you to read the complaint. It's stunning. And follow along with this case as it develops. We also understand that working with our partners at USDA is critical to agricultural enforcement. It is a key part of President Biden's whole of government approach to competition. That approach is key to revitalizing agriculture antitrust and the Packers and Stockyards enforcement. In our collaboration with USDA, I'm pleased to say, It's bearing results. That collaboration, led by Secretary Vilsack, has delivered multiple Packers and Stockyards Act cases and transformative outcomes in poultry that are finally beginning to restore competition and fairness in the industry. In the cooked foods case, for instance, our proposed remedy will end a penalty provision that lowers the wages of chicken growers by preventing them from switching processors. Most importantly, and as importantly, in another case, we allege that the tournament system used by another meat packer and processor was unfair in violation of the Packers and Stockyards Act. And we won in a store consent decree that blocked that company from penalizing growers for performance, delivering finally fairness and greater pay predictability for those growers. This victory for growers could not have happened without our partnership, the USDA, and the leadership of Secretary Vilsack. We know the tournament system case will be a model for how to reform this industry going forward. We also know that we can and must bring our partnership with the USDA, Packers and Stockyards Act enforcement beyond poultry into beef and other parts of our food supply chain. That's one reason why we are putting our money where our mouth is and hiring more lawyers and more experts related to agriculture. These lawyers, I'm pleased to announce, will be based in the Midwest and will focus on both civil and criminal ag enforcement at the Antitrust Division. With the help of our partners at the USDA, we hope they may even bring Packers and Stockyards case or 2 or 20. With that, I am pleased to introduce our great ally, collaborator in this effort, someone who is truly a champion for the family farmer.
We'll hear from Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack later in this show. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson, and we will be back in just a moment with more agriculture news. Coming up in a few moments, we'll have today's This Land of Ours report, but first, more of the day's agriculture news. And with today's AgNet West headlines, here's Brian German.
The comment period for the proposed changes to the current food safety standards for leafy greens will be closing soon. The comment period for the proposed changes to the LGMA-approved metrics related to harvesting equipment, sanitation, and a small update to the water section for alignment with the FSMA final rule on agricultural water will close on Tuesday, July 2nd. Comments can be submitted online at leafygreenguidance.com. Western growers will also be hosting a webinar on July 11th to go over the comments received. During the web discussion, proposed changes to the LGMA-approved metrics will be publicly presented by the corresponding submitter with open dialogue allowed for all attendees. Afterwards, Western growers will summarize all the materials to create a report for both the Arizona and California LGMAs for review before going through a final approval process. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has awarded $50 million to 141 recipients across 40 states and Puerto Rico through the Farm Labor Stabilization and Protection Pilot Program. The initiative aims to enhance the resilience of the U.S. food supply chain by addressing agricultural labor challenges and instability while also bolstering protections for farm workers and expanding legal pathways for labor migration. Awardees will implement various commitments such as improving pay-related benefits, enhancing working conditions, providing worker-friendly benefits like training and recreation spaces, and participating in worker-driven programs to improve workplace environments. Introduced in September 2023, the FLSP program collaborates with federal agencies to promote safe working environments and ethical recruitment practices for farm workers. Clean Fuels Alliance America, the Renewable Fuels Association, and the National Farmers Union have filed lawsuits against the EPA over its finalized emission standards for heavy-duty and light-to-medium-duty vehicles. Clean Fuels contends that the EPA's greenhouse gas emission standards for heavy-duty vehicles Phase 3, which favors electric and hybrid vehicles for 2027 through 2032, neglects the benefits of biodiesel and renewable diesel already available and viable for emission reduction. NFU and RFA both argue EPA's emission standards for light and medium-duty vehicles unlawfully mandate electric vehicle production while disregarding low-carbon ethanol and flex fuel technologies. The groups contend that the lawsuits are meant to ensure the benefits of biodiesel, renewable diesel, and ethanol are considered and highlight EPA's statutory overreach and the adverse impacts on renewable fuel industries. A new mode of action provides another rotational option for rice growers addressing weed problems. Rice Farm Advisor Whitney Brim DeForest highlighted a recently registered product for California rice.
So Zimbu is pure clonal is the active ingredient, and this one we've been working on for a while, so we're very excited to see it come to the market. So it'll be the first year for this product, and it is a granular formulation, so it's applied either pre-emergence of the weeds or day of seeding into a flooded field, so it's going to be not a drill seeded product. It is a PPO inhibitor. It is not super strong on grass, but it does have grass suppression, and it is the only PPO inhibitor registered that has any activity on grasses at all. So maybe you'd put 2 different products down at the beginning of the season for added grass control. But it is really strong on small flower, umbrella sedge, and broadleafs. And then again, like I said, it's a new mode of action for the grasses.
The Irrigation Association has announced the theme for this year's Smart Irrigation Month in July. This year, the focus extends beyond innovative systems and technologies to celebrate the people who make it all possible with the theme of We Are Smart Irrigation. Each July Smart Irrigation Month highlights the social, economic, and environmental benefits of efficient irrigation products and services. Smart Irrigation Month, sponsored by HydroPoint, will emphasize the importance of efficient irrigation in conserving water, reducing costs, and promoting sustainable practices. The theme We Are Smart Irrigation aims to recognize and honor the professionals who design, install, and manage these systems, showcasing their dedication and expertise. To support the initiative, the Irrigation Association will be providing downloadable resources on their website, helping businesses and individuals prepare and stay engaged throughout the month of July. I'm Brian German for AgNet West Radio Network.
There's good news for cherry lovers. That's coming up on This Land of Ours.
More sweet cherries should be available for summertime snacking, according to USDA's National Agricultural Statistics Service in that crop production report of that commodity. But Lance Honig of USDA NASS notes that increase comes with a caveat.
We did bring a state back into our estimating program here at NASS. Michigan, a huge producer of tart cherries, not quite so big on sweet cherries. A few years ago, we kind of dropped them out. They picked up their production gain a little bit, and so they're back.
The Wolverine State's contribution of 22,000 tons of sweet cherries to the count offsets expected production declines with 2 of the 3 major sweet cherry growing states, Washington and California. Yet,
if you look in California in particular, that's still a very large crop. They're actually coming off a near record crop last season. And so even though it's down in California, still a very big crop there, a little bit below average crop in Washington, but still good size.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. The national symbol of wildfire prevention and the public service campaign that created him reached the 80th anniversary mark in 2024. Rod Bain looks at some of the cultural and cumulative impacts of Smokey the Bear in this edition of Agriculture USA.
The icon of wildfire prevention efforts celebrates his 8th decade of service in 2024.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
And it has been a significant journey for Smokey Bear, the public service advertising campaign, and the character itself. From a record-setting length of service in presenting his message to
the U.S. Postal Service actually created Smokey's own zip code. Kind of shows the cultural height of popularity of Smokey.
I'm Rod Bain. Lincoln Bramwell of the U.S. Forest Service is among those joining us as we celebrate 80 years of Smokey Bear in this edition of Agriculture USA. A category of rarefied air. Those who have their own zip code within the United States. Any guesses who? The President of the United States.
The U.S. President has an individual zip code.
Shared with the First Lady, the 20500 zip code. Santa Claus? While mail to Santa goes to the town of North Pole, Alaska, zip code 99705, St. Nicholas himself does not have an individual zip code. Only one other individual can claim to have their own U.S. zip code.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
The symbol of wildfire prevention himself, Smokey Bear. According to U.S. Forest Service historian Lincoln Bramwell, while around since 1944 as an advertising campaign cartoon character, it was the rescue of a black bear cub from a New Mexico wildfire in 1950 that morphed the character into a living symbol residing in the National Zoo in Washington, D.C.
That's when Smokey's popularity really sort of took off. A symbol you could visit and see with your own eyes if you visited the National Zoo in our nation's capital. From there, Smokey became so popular and started receiving fan mail, primarily from children, and whole classes would write Smokey care of the National Zoo that the U.S. Postal Service actually created Smokey's own zip code.
The living symbol Smokey died in 1976, succeeded by a cub adopted 5 years earlier, Little Smokey, who became the living symbol of the National Zoo until his passing in 1990. Smokey's zip code remained active until it was decommissioned in 1993. However, Smokey Bear's popularity with citizens remained so strong, letters continued to be sent via the zip code to the wildfire prevention bear. That led to the Forest Service and the U.S. Postal Service to reactivate Smokey's zip code in 2014. The 70th anniversary of Smokey's creation through the joint Ad Council, Forest Service, National Association of State Foresters Public Service campaign. And while there was an interruption of sorts in Smokey's mail, there has been no such disruption in Smokey presenting his message to the American public.
It's pretty incredible to think about 80 years of a continuous public service announcement campaign.
That includes variations to that message over time. Perhaps the most significant occurred in 2001.
The formal message changed from only you can prevent forest fires to only you can prevent wildfires. And that was really done in recognition of how wildfires and fire events take place in sort of all kind of ecological conditions, not just tall standing forests that we think of. That was excluding all the other fuel types like grass fires and prairie fires.
80th anniversary celebrations are planned in various forms across the country in 2024. Recognition also comes in the way of a new public service advertising campaign for Smokey.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know, but I can only teach wildfire prevention.
A long-form social media video now available to honor Smokey, entitled Decades. The video also features the new voice of Smokey, actor Brian Tyree Henry. If you are unable to participate in upcoming 80th anniversary celebrations for Smokey Bear, you can always write a letter or send a postcard providing well wishes. Lincoln Bramwell, what is Smokey's zip code anyway?
20252.
You don't mind repeating that, do you?
20252.
Thank you very much, Lincoln. You can learn more about Smokey and wildfire prevention by going to his website, www.smokeybear.com. This has been Agriculture USA. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
If you are trying to work outside in severe heat, an expert has some tips to keep you safe from heat stroke. Gary Crawford has the story.
We are only a few days into this summer season, and the country is already suffering a massive heat wave with temperatures more like August than June. Deadly temperatures. Many people who work outdoors a lot are being laid low by the heat. They're not used to it. It's come on so suddenly. Some have even died from heat stress and heat stroke. And so to reduce the chances of succumbing to the heat,
basically what we'd like to do is acclimate ourselves to the work environment.
Ohio State University Health and Safety Professor Dee Jepson.
You can't just go out and work a full day the very first day in the heat. You kind of have to let your body build up to that.
Especially if we are not seasoned outdoor workers and just deciding on day one to brave the severe heat and get all of those jobs done around the place, not a good idea, as demonstrated by the statistics.
When we look at outdoor workers in general, half of the deaths that happen to workers will happen on their very first day of the job. and 70% of any of the heat-related deaths occur within the worker's first week of the job.
So to use the technical term, take it easy in the heat. Just do a little work at a time out there and be kind to yourself with
rest, water, and shade.
And plenty of all three, especially water. Dee Jepson says drink at least 1 cup of water every 20 minutes.
A lot of times people think, I don't drink that often, or I don't want to drink that much, I'll be sick. If you're really out working in this heat and out in the elements, every 20 minutes, drink a cup of water. You'll feel much better.
Also wear the lightest, loosest fitting, light colored clothes that you can get away with. And finally, here's one more clothing suggestion.
Throw away that beloved ball cap. It is not the best work hat.
Instead, she says wear hats with at least a 3-inch brim all the way around them.
They block the UV exposure from your face, the top of your ears, the back of your necks. That is 80% of our skin cancer comes from that part of our bodies. So that tells us that we're not wearing the correct headwear to protect from the UV exposure.
Finally, Dee says even if you follow her advice to the letter, the heat could still start to get to you. So be sure to pay attention to how you're feeling and thinking. Symptoms of heat problems can include
fatigue or dizziness, even irritability, impaired judgment, any type of lack of ability to concentrate.
If you notice any of those symptoms, Dee Jepson says get out of the heat, get cooled down, and get medical help. This is Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
This is the AgNet News Hour, and we will be back in just a moment with more agriculture news. You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. Continuing with our top story today, the USDA announced new action on the Stockyards and Packers Act. It says the Fair and Competitive Livestock and Poultry Markets proposed rule would tackle long-standing challenges around interpretations of unfairness and competitive injury for the livestock, meat, and poultry sectors. However, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association issued a statement against the rule. NCBA Vice President of Government Affairs Ethan Lane called it a direct attack on cattle producer profitability. The announcement was made Tuesday at the Center for American Progress. We go now to Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack making the announcement.
The top 10% of farmers in terms of sales represent those who sell more than $500,000 in sales each year. Actually, it's about 7.5% of farms. 150,000 farms out of 1.9 million. During a record period of farm income, those farms, representing 7.5 to 10%, received 85% of the income generated. That meant that 1.7 million farms had to share the balance, which is why nearly 50% of our farms made no money, and nearly 40% made money, but the money that was made to support their families had to come from off-farm income. So we began asking the question, why is it necessary for farm families to work multiple jobs? Why can't we figure out ways in which the farm itself can generate multiple streams of income? And that's why we invested resources in 135 contracts with major partners focused on encouraging 203 climate smart practices to be incorporated on the farm, paying farmers to embrace those practices involving nearly 100 commodities, creating a new value-added opportunity for farm families. By measuring and monitoring and verifying the results of those climate smart practices, we'll qualify those families as well ultimately for participation in new ecosystem service markets, creating a new source of income, a new income stream for small and mid-sized farming operations. We're working hard to ensure that those same farms are developing sustainable feedstocks for the emerging bioproduct industry and economy. A good example is our low-carbon sustainable aviation and marine fuel opportunity. 36 billion gallons of fuel that hasn't been made today, but that will be made over the course of the next several years. An opportunity for additional income streams by converting agricultural waste into something far more valuable. We're helping to facilitate the clean energy economy on farms and ranches across America with investments in the Renewable Energy for America program, We're also seeing co-ops, RECs and REAs incorporating new opportunities provided by USDA and incorporating in their business plan a transition from fossil fuel generated electricity to more renewable sources. All told, we're significantly investing resources in this new revitalized economy. We're also strengthening supply chains by investing and creating true competition by developing stronger local and regional food systems. The opportunity to create competition for major processors by investing in expanded processing capacity, expanded market opportunities for small slaughterhouses, opportunities for local food purchasing agreements where as we purchase for food for schools or for food banks, we're essentially making sure that those investments are not necessarily made through large corporations, but are made with entities that are doing business with local and regional producers. All told, the USDA has made almost 8,600 investments and obligations to date, investing nearly $20 billion in this new economic opportunity to build small and mid-sized farming operations and to provide a new opportunity. A companion effort on the part of USDA to this investment is to work to create new and better markets by focusing on more transparency, more fairness, and more competition in the marketplace. Andy Green and his team at USDA has worked hard on a number of issues designed to allow us to have a more transparent, fairer, and more competitive marketplace. Jonathan's mentioned the work that we've done with the Department of Justice, which is in fact a reflection of an all and whole of government approach to this challenge. We've worked with the Patent Office at the Department of Commerce. We established a new seed liaison position. It's designed really to work with farmers and breeders to ensure that as patents are being discussed and examined, that the farmer's voice and the breeder's needs are being incorporated in decisions that are made relative to patents. We're working with state attorney generals across the country to assist them in their own individual enforcement efforts and putting resources behind that partnership. And in addition, we focused on labeling, the ability and opportunity for us to ensure that consumers are getting what they think they are paying for. When a product says product of the USA, it means that everything that was done about that product, where it was born, where it was raised, where it was processed, was done in the United States, not just part of that process, but all of that process. And we've focused on modernizing our Packers and Stockyards Act, working with the Department of Justice to ensure that we actually put some real opportunities in Packers and Stockyards to create a fairer and more transparent market. We started with poultry, and particularly transparency in the arrangements between poultry farmers and integrators. We asked the integrators to provide us more information in a rule that's been finalized, more information about their financial circumstances and conditions. After all, these integrators were asking farmers to invest a significant amount in operations. It made sense to us that the farmers would be able to know for a fact whether or not the person or entity they were doing business with was in a financial circumstance and condition to live up to their responsibilities under the contract. And so we've modernized and created this poultry transparency rule. We next focused on better defining circumstances in the marketplace that were unacceptable, circumstances involving discrimination or retaliation. All too often, farmers were put at a disadvantage when they attempted to enforce their rights or raise questions or even seek the opportunity simply to speak to a farmer about what their contract may provide, and only to find that they were retaliated against by the integrator. So we specifically defined in a new rule the improperness of retaliation and discrimination and making it clear that that would result in a violation of Packers and Stockyards. We looked at the poultry tournament system and began that process of ensuring fairness in that system. The ability, for example, when farmers entered into an arrangement with the poultry tournament system, they thought they were getting a base price for whatever it is they were producing. only to find out that later in the process, there were deductions for certain actions determined and defined by the integrator. Those actions resulted actually in the farmer receiving less than they expected and anticipated. And the result of that obviously puts farmers in a tough financial circumstance. With this new poultry tournament system rule that we're proposing, essentially what it does is it says the base price is the base price. There are no deductions and no reductions that can take place. Now, there will be additions and opportunities for more income under the tournament system. And this rule basically provides a clear understanding of how those additions can be determined in a fair and transparent way, so that farmers are put in a situation where this tournament system actually operates in a fair way, a balanced way, that producers are not given certain advantages, if you will, in order to secure those additional premiums. It's an opportunity for each producer to compete effectively for those premiums. And today we announce a fourth rule, a rule that begins the process of dealing with an issue that has been outstanding for quite some time. And that is the notion of exactly what does it mean to be unfair under the Packers and Stockyards Act under Section 202A. What does that mean? Does it require that you prove the unfairness to the entire industry? Or is it possible that there may be circumstances and individual factual circumstances where the unfairness occurs to one or a handful of producers? Is this notion of competitive injury, does it require that the entire marketplace be impacted? Or is it possible for participants eventually and ultimately to have the opportunity to prove a Packers and Stockyards case? With what we propose today, we clearly now delineate there is an opportunity for unfairness to be couched in terms of individual harm, an individual producer who might be able to establish under the elements of the new rule that the harm was specific to their operation and constituted a violation of Packers and Stockyards. At the same time, we obviously will continue to work in terms of making sure that if there is injury to the entire marketplace, that too represents a violation of the Packers and Stockyards Act. So in combination, what we've done is we've expanded transparency and made it easier for farmers to understand the deals that they're entering into and who they're contracting with. We made sure that they couldn't be discriminated against or retaliated against. We made sure that a tournament system would operate fairly and that there would not be any specific deductions that caught farmers by surprise. And today, we provide an enforcement tool that I think will provide for greater balance in the relationship between farmer and integrator. All of this is designed in combination with the resources and investments we've made to create the opportunity for more new and better markets. And that translates to an opportunity for more farmers to have an opportunity for their operation to remain successful and profitable.
Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack. You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. Now for more news. It's wildfire season in California, and as flames burn just miles away from his land, I talked with Napa County grower and winery owner Rob Fisher about the ways wildfires affect his business.
We absolutely worry about it every year. Every year starting about a decade ago. And it's something that we now insure regularly around in terms of crop insurance. Of course, testing around smoke damage is becoming better understood. It's still not perfect, but we're looking forward to more advancement around that and more financial protections around it too.
I wanted to ask you about smoke damage to the grapes because I know that, with grapes with having been such a thin skin, what can smoke damage do to your crop?
It can completely ruin the crop. There really is no amount of smoke evidence that's positive. Any smoke evidence is really damaging, and so it really is a factor of the skin of the grape respiring, breathing in the volatile smoke and binding to elements in the skin and in the juice that damages the harvest. So it's kind of binary. Any amount is damaging.
And so the fire doesn't have to actually get your vineyard. It just has to be close enough that you get some smoke.
Close enough to get smoke. We're learning more and more each year, and a number of places are hard at work with research on this. But we're starting to find, I think, that it's fresh smoke that's the most damaging. Tends to be more volatile and can bind more easily to the fruit itself. Acrid smoke that's had days in the atmosphere, maybe blowing from other counties, other states, it appears has less of an immediate impact. But I think there's more work to be done to totally understand that.
That's today's top agriculture news. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. Thank you for sharing your morning with us.
To get more information on the topics you heard today, visit AgNet West online at agnetwest.com. You can also stay connected by following us on our social media at AgNet West on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also find our broadcast team of Brian German and Sabrina Halvorson on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for listening to the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. AgNet West Radio Network, your primary choice for agriculture news.